So yeah, hi. So I'm Roy.
And I'm Tim.
Brothers, not twins.
No.
Everybody thinks we're 2 years apart. So that's yeah. I'm older. Yeah, yeah.
I look older, but he's older.
So yeah, we're super excited to be here. This means a lot for us. Like we'll go with the history where we came from. What Isabel already said, we did a lot of music videos, already trying to find systems. We did a lot of big shows and video show where we had to fill up content for a couple of hours. And it's pretty hard to render out everything. So we're already busy with trying to come up with smart system in After Effects to generate a lot of things. Started using TouchDesigner, I think, 7 years ago. Together with Itzhard Kwadijk, I was also in our studio. Then 2 years ago, we had a workshop. We gave workshops in Amsterdam with Stanislav.
Yeah, Stanislav. He described a bit of GLSL, and that really got me inspired. I have more like a software development background. I used to web develop a lot. And after the workshop of Stanislav, I was immediately sold and went into TouchDesigner full-time. So
we tried to push it into clients and to get more and more assignments to it. Now we're finally at a point that we have all our systems ready, and we have our website is up, I think, like today, and we're starting. So we're super excited. This talk as well was a bit of a turning point. It feels like it's good. Yeah. So nice. We can't be more excited. So as you can see, this is the stuff that we did. More traditional pipeline, more motion graphic. Now with the whole technology stuff, can you? Yeah. So there's all the YFX. Like we don't just want to do service client work. Every assignment we take on, we try to put it in a bigger picture. Basically, create our own research and try to find clients and connect with clients that fit in that picture. Main thing is to connect design and technology. Until now, we have all the software packages, and you limit it to those packages, limited to the timeline from A to B. With TouchDesign and the real-time programming, everything changes. But it's really hard to being a programmer and being a designer are two different things, and we're merging that. It helps a lot that we're brothers, that we can talk. Also, it's really hard sometimes because we're both pretty stubborn. But yeah, it's nice. So the whole model of what we did before, a client comes to you with a brief and we start doing it. But the problem with this technology is that it's so new, and even like us already, we almost can't keep up with all the stuff that's happening. So imagine like an art director or a brand manager and stuff, they have no clue what we're doing. So there was a really big part of psychology involved, explaining it and stuff like that, and still, it's hard. So we took on a different approach now.
Yeah, what we like to do is make little experiments, such as those guys. And we usually come together at my place or his place and just play around and find like a nice kind of feeling of little effects, experiments. And this way we can use those little experiments for other projects that come around, such as this one. This is Burning Man last year. We did with Peter Walker. On the left side here, you see like a scanned head of Emily. It's free to download online, and we use this for a little experiment to design a kind of atmosphere like this. And eventually, we could use this little project for Burning Man, which you see on the right.
So we already did the whole play stuff. I mean, the most fun of TouchDesign and the experimental side we did, and then we take that on, and then we have the time and the money to No money in this case, but we have the time then to really dive into it. Of course, like we're fed up with the old results, so we push it up a bit. But it's a really nice way of working. Mysteryland, like we try to incorporate the two, of course, like having experiment and a project at the same time. We have a good connection with a big park organization in Holland, and they give us a clean brief and just show up and do whatever you want. So we, in this case, we wanted to research like the relationship between light and visuals, and basically we controlled two Sharpie lights, projected on a dome, and figured out a way where the Sharpie, where the spotlight was hitting the dome, and then we can have interaction happening. Now this thing is pretty ugly. Also the movie, it's like I think Tim's camera work, amazing.
Sorry.
But it is like a nice, it works. So now we can start thinking about it and start incorporating a concept and start getting like, like really working out. I think there's a lot of stuff that still can be done by this, because all in the event world you have all these different islands, light and visuals and audio, and the nice thing is with touch is that you can combine everything.
A different project we did was for the Mall of Switzerland. We did with Itzhak Kwadijk as well. On the left side, we see like an aquarium. This
Not only a good programmer, also a good swimmer.
And on the right side, it was a different team. So we had like different teams for over the whole year. You can see it here. It was like one big LED screen with a Kinect pointing on it, and a bit of an augmented reality kind of project.
Yeah. I think we did. We just finished. Also nice, together with a famous Dutch artist, Thijs Biersteker. He's really into climate change and trying to evolve the whole changing of nature. So in this case, we hooked up how many? Like 6 sensors?
Yeah, six or seven sensors. Yeah. So there were like sensors to measure the amount of CO2, the amount of solar radiation, and all kinds of stuff. How the tree feels. So we got like a bit of a feeling like, okay, it feels healthy or less healthy, and we try to visualize this in an abstract way.
So basically, if you cut down a tree, you have the 3 rings. They generate like 1 ring a year, and you can read a lot about it, like if it's healthy, if it's eaten by insects and all that stuff. So instead of having a year, we used it for 1 ring per second. So it gives like an instant feedback how happy the tree is in Paris.
And as you can see, it's not so happy.
Like the further apart the lines, it's the healthier it is because it grows faster. But the more like wonky it is, the less
less healthy.
Yeah, probably because it's in Paris. No. Another thing, like this is a totally opposite. Basically, it's really corporate stuff. It's together with Site Labs. We just did it for ambient LED installation in New York for a big bank. This was all video. Doing this kind of projects, and we're not like talking to the actual client. Like, of course, it's way bigger than our small studio. So there was like a playback system which used video, but we do use the whole pipeline of TouchDesigner. Only in the end we use like a movie out top. So in a way we can build our own After Effects stuff that can generate stuff really fast.
So we also have like different kind of effects. We try to make it real time, but yeah, it's a corporate world, so it was quite difficult to get like a proper real time station there. But this was also a test of us making a more like a fluidity feeling.
Water stuff, yeah. So the bigger picture, the line in all these things, is that at the core, there's always like a code part and a creative part where we come up with ideas and start producing it. But the traditional model is that you start with style frames and present it to the client, and they say like, yeah, cool, and then you start working on it. So you basically fix the whole creative stuff in the beginning already. And most times when you're working on something, you get then the nice ideas, then you get really into it. So we divide up our research into 3 phases. First one, the traditional, where we came from. We're now in the second one, where we expand the creative phase, maximize creative expression, and try to reduce the whole production time. The creative expression we'll talk about later. Cutting the production time is basically setting up a modular system, but the whole system is being controlled by all the parameters. And then the next phase is the...
Yeah, and the future, the research we're doing now is combining AI to create our production, so that that the production even gets less, and we have more time to play around and see what's nice and what looks good.
I think it's nice now with this whole new technology that there's space. There's no set lines yet what it's going to be, and we all can determine those rules, because people. Yeah, it's going so fast, so we can determine our rules.
So what we want to do, or what we're doing, is like trying to make every component we're using to make it very modular, so that we can really copy-paste it to another project. And such a model, such a component, which is maybe quite obvious, but has an input, some core elements, some place where the magic happens, and an output.
And that's also where our name comes from, the YFX,
yeah.
Like the basic math formula. So our talk is about if you have then that component and controlling that component, like you have custom parameters, and you can feed something in there. You can use sliders, but you can use a Connect or yeah, whatever, like a banana. So that process, that thing in between, like controlling a component, that it seems really simple, but it's so powerful. You can get so much stuff out of it, and that's a bit of the main line between in our research. So basically, to close the gap between design and code means that we have to separate it first, and then have the control stuff talk to each other. So the basic thing is like input, core, output. If you put it recursively, you have it inside of your TouchDesigner network, but you can also see it as a total thing in the project. We did a project for the Volvo Ocean Race, which was a big sailing race around the world, and they have 11 stopovers. We did an award ceremony, quite last minute. They asked us to design an LED background in the whole event, prints for the whole event, signage, and the whole package. So what we did,
So the problem was a little bit that okay, all the data of the race was like tracked, so everything was available. We could see where the boats were on the whole race, but it was not in a standard API, so we couldn't fetch it just by data. But there was a web application that we could access with the web render top. And what we did here on the left side, this is the application from the website, and we fetched out the place where the boats were, and this way we could find the way how the weather was at that moment. So if it was very windy, it's red. If it's green, it's like chilled. And here the colors are representing by the boats and the position. So white was at this moment in front.
Yeah, so the concept was, we, of course, like the theme of a sailing race is water, but we couldn't use actual water, because there was a casualty, somebody passed away. So they wanted to show water without water. So we made like a parametric wave, and the wave is being driven by the wind at that point. There were 11 legs, so we, over the course of the evening, you basically had a really abstract way of following the race, and it's all data-driven. If you see then the input-output again, and if that's the core, like the wave that's making, and we change the input and the output, we can generate like video, which was this, like the whole evening was going through, nice ambient background, but we can also just put a render top or a render in there, put it at high res, and use it as all the print work. So these are actual places on the ocean with the wind.
So they are all the same core, the same elements, same components that creates those waves, but the output is different, or the input, such as this one, where we also had a Kinect installation. Same waves, but now driven by the person standing in front of it.
So this is like cutting down the production time again, so we can spend more time on the actual core. And the rest is all just output. Okay, so the whole design thing, like I went to art school. I was really interested in the whole design and composition and color use, and then I started VJing. And if you have like a static picture, you have all the color and the composition. With animation, you get component time with it. So suddenly, like the options you're doing is like exponential, and it took me, yeah, it was nuts. Like I went crazy because I have I didn't know what to choose. Now with the whole programming stuff, it's even worse. Like there's no, there's no end to it. And that's just a different mindset. You're no longer making an end result, a picture or an animation, you're making a system. And it's never ended, it's end when you press save. So this is a project, again an experiment which we started like, I don't know, like on an evening somewhere. Inspired by Bauhaus. If you really, the Bauhaus is an architectural style from Germany, really blocky. And
yeah, let's show it.
yeah, go in. This patch, we wanted to show you like how really simple patch can get out of hand like really quickly. And that in the beginning it's really annoying and you go nuts and with version control and the whole But then if you use it in your advantage, it becomes like a really powerful tool. And that's what we want to show it with this thing.
So what it is like we have a cube here, and we divided it in smaller cubes. And then we have like little sliders here that gives a probability of if it splits or not. So if we raise the slider a bit, it splits. We have another iteration that it splits, another one, and another one. Then we can also press this funky button. It's generate a new random seed. So then you get every time a different kind of composition.
So the whole thing about when you're making something, you put something of yourself in the time and your heart. So if you, for instance, if you use color, you spend a lot of time thinking like, okay, what color am I going to use? The more time you spend on it, the more you get attached to it. So also the more harder it is to get rid of it. If you move that stuff from the design stuff to a more generative way, you can just generate like a lot of patterns and think like, oh, this is pretty, this is not pretty. And in that way, like you let the computer give you examples and you can choose. It's really easy to say no because you didn't put any time in it, and it's really easy to say, or it's nice to say like, oh, that's cool. The thing is like when you're, the longer you're busy with something, like if you start doing, I don't know, knitting or something like that, the first phase is really easy. You learn a lot of stuff in the beginning, and the longer you're busy, the longer it takes. Like a video game. You start playing a game, within 10 minutes you're on level 2, half an hour level 3, and then a week level 4, and then after 600 years you're at level 20. Now the main thing, what we love about what we're doing is discovering, learning new things, discovering yourself. It's nice when somebody tells you like, oh, we made some good stuff, but that's all like internal. Like the real thing is like surprising yourself. But if the longer you're busy with it, the longer it takes before you make something which is new. In our opinion, making something truly unique can come from either grabbing different stuff which you find online or from nature or any kind of inspiration, mix it together with your own style, and then you have something new, or become an artist and study and focus on a really small part. Both ways, it's all based on your own experience and then your own interpretation of stuff. With this thing, when you create the system, stuff pops up which you never thought of, and that's all the pictures that you saw like before. I don't know how many we made, but it was all done like in one evening. It started as a Bauhaus thing. Bauhaus is really square and really thing, but then changing a couple of parameters, making it like blobby or use the shiny thing. That's nice. I like the shiny stuff. Yeah, shiny.
It is shiny, no?
What?
It's already shiny.
Oh, it's already shiny. Oh, it's not shiny.
Yeah, it's shiny.
Oh, in the texture scale of that. Okay, so let's say you end up with something like this. Like already, basically it's only 3 or 4 different components, but the options are crazy. What?
Infinite options.
Yeah. So this is what we like to do, and then you have did you do the random stuff already with the color thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played around.
So how do we use this? Let's say a client comes in with an assignment, with a project, and we have something. We have this whole database of proof of concepts, and then we think like, okay, this fits with it. Like I don't know if some guy wants a festival layout, like the whole style of the festival, and he likes blocks. Then we think like, oh, we have a blocky thing. The good thing, if you do the same thing as what we did with Volvo, change the output, then this can be like the poster, but also all the social posts. It can be the feature set, it can be the animation between presenters, the banners thing, and all based on one thing.
Now we want to show you a little bit about a more technical component we are building. I'm a very big fan of particle systems, and it seems like every project involves some sort of particle system. But I always was building them from scratch. Every time a new version of a new version of the same particle system. So what we're working on now is a more generic version of the particle system, which I want to show you a little bit. So here we have like particles flying around. Let's include a guy and a nice Spider-Man-looking breakdancer. And it emits some particles from the wrist. We can add some other particles, such as a smoky kind of particle system. What we did here is borrowed from the gaming industry, where you have little billboards, which are little rectangles, always pointing to the camera. And within this rectangle, we played a little movie of a little rendered smoke. And this way, if we blend it all together, you get this foggy, smoky feeling. But it's just like a little video clip, so it's very cheap for the GPU, and it's it's quite fast.
So it's all shader-based, like GPU stuff.
We can also emit from every vertex of the guy. We transformed the animation of a normal
Motion capture,
motion capture to
skeleton.
a shader where we have every position of the animation as pixels, and this way we could use those positions of every vertex during the animation as emitters. So as you can see, it's like flying all over the place. If we enable an attractor, we can get them back. And so we have also different balls and kind of things. Let me show you a little bit about how it's done. So, this is kind of the structure we always start with a new project, where we have a control here, which is kind of the input of the project. So everything that comes into the project, such as a Kinect installation or a web renderer or anything that comes into the project lives in control. Core is the main element, the magic, and it gives an output. Now in this case, the core is just a renderer. It just renders and some post effects, but it just renders the world here. And in the world, we have those 5 particle systems I was showing. But they are all the same, so they get cloned from one big generic particle system. And using some custom parameters, we can change the whole look. It's like we can use instancing, but we can also use normal particles, geometry shaders to create little particles. If you look into it, you can see here it's a compute shader. So all those pixels are the particle information, the position, the speed, the color, and flying around.
Yeah, and the main thing is it's all one component. So the only thing, like when you switch from the whole programming vibe to the design vibe, you can just play around with your microphone, with sliders, and again you come up with new stuff that's getting exciting. We're in time, yeah. So the last project we wanted to show is like how it all comes together. We love music and music visualization, and a couple of years ago we did a tour of visuals for Noisia, which is like a drum and bass collective from Groningen in Holland. And they also we really got a click, and we start thinking, okay, how can you generate new music? How can you visualize music? And it's like an ongoing test thing with them. So this project is just done. It's the first preview that we're. Okay, can I just
sure.
thing a bit? It's not so pretty now.
Oh, it's so white.
It has to have a bit more atmosphere, right? No, yeah, wait, the music is coming. Okay. A bit more contrast.
Yeah, a little bit like
Okay. The whole idea from this was inspired by a Cassius clip from the 90s or 2000 or something. There was a camera move over a landscape, endless, infinite. And we both loved it so much that we wanted to recreate that in TouchDesigner. So basically it's like one plane that just shifts. The guy is standing still, animation on it, but the landscape is switching. Maybe the contrast a bit back. So we started with this, and we just started playing around and think like, okay, maybe we can change the environment. So we start building all the custom components and have presets attached to them. So we just play around, and we think like, oh, this is nice, save it as a preset, and continue. So basically we have 3 phases. One is the actual design of the whole system, the Quark thing, which is Tim's mind going crazy. Then we have the phase where we build up all the components with the presets, and then the last phase we do the synchronization process. It's really nice what we always did with Boompje as well, separate the synchronization process from the actual design process, because then you can change parameters and, for instance, have something bounce on the beat, or if you're not happy with it, you can let something else bounce on the beat. Okay, so we prepared like a Ableton track. This is just a really simple audio file, which we put in a MIDI track underneath it with cue points. And the only thing it basically does is sense of OSC notes being received by touch and triggering presets. Yeah, let's play, right?
So let's show.
Can we dim the lights a bit? Is that possible? And turn up the...
Working.
Thank you. Nice. Oh. Thank you. And thank you for having us here.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. No.
Thanks, guys. That was amazing. Any questions?
What's next?
Yeah, really, wow. That's amazing.
Beer. No. I don't know. Kinda. Like we're constantly building stuff. And, yeah, this project will continue for sure, and I think your project will also be on the list.
Hi, first of all, good job. That's pretty amazing. I just wanted to ask, when do you stop working on a component? I mean, you can add something for forever, right? There's always something, always a new color, always particles and stuff like that. So when you decide, okay, that's enough.
I think it's mainly after trial and error, such as the particle system we built. I built one before, trying to make a generic one, but it became so complex that it was this monster component that's not reusable anymore. So yeah, it's trial and error to get like the right proportion, like some features not to put in, and maybe make another plugin or component that fits in the main component.
Yeah, and basically you redo everything all the time, right? I mean, it's never what you say, and we just accepted that. Yeah. I'll stop this. Yeah.
How do you approach separation of UI and functionality within your components?
Yeah. And that was actually the whole thing what started me on TouchDesigner. There's so much power in only that parameter, the slider. I was so happy when we had like an entire control system and a whole VJ tool, and then we start playing with it at 4 frames per second. Like now we do a lot of stuff in shaders, so we everything is like built in shades which can get bigger frame rates. Separating the whole UI, basically it all goes to chops. So we have a chop in the middle. Now with the binding stuff, you can connect everything really easy together. And then basically a UI is an input. So it doesn't really matter if you can slide it or use a touch scene and use another computer to control it. So we see it as a different, as an input. But it's always separate, always. There's no engine part running in the UI. It's like the model view. What was it?
Model view control.
Yeah.
It's like a software development technique where you really separate the UI and the model, the world, the thing you're doing. We really try to separate that so that the UI eventually can run on a different system and just sending signals to the main renderer machine to do this stuff.
To give an example of a button, I spent like a year on a button. The state of a button, like it can be, if you press it, it can be triggering the state of the button as well. It goes on and gets green or something like that. So you can do that inside of the button, but then you have all the states everywhere. What we do now is we let the color, the UI element, that the feedback, just looks at a parameter which you're controlling, and it gets the color from there. And all the buttons that we use are momentary. It triggers a script to set this thing. It turns into on, and the button sees like, oh, it's on, I go green. So it's always like a circle. But I can, yeah. We're waiting for the process comp. Like what? Oh, yeah. We already saw some stuff on the popping up. Yeah.
So yeah, I was digging your UI elements. I was wondering like what your process is to make the visuals on those. Like, do you roll all your own, etc.?
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand the question.
Like the actual visuals of the UI elements, do you like kind of pull in your own widgets, or do you like the look of them, the feel of them, and you know how you go about actually making how they look and feel?
Yeah. You can you look up the YFX bar? So I was last year in Berlin. I finished my pack, my whole UI pack. And then Derivative came, and they showed the widgets, and they had exactly the same font, shoes, and the only thing like their buttons were a bit higher.
So they ripped you off.
Ivan ripped me and Jared. No. So in the beginning I was like, oh, okay. So what should I do? Shall I continue it? Because of course it's never finished. Or shall I adapt the widget? At this point, it's like a combination of both. Some stuff really works well in the widgets. Some stuff we still use our own things. So this is our own thing. Of course, it doesn't work. Basically, what is missing from the normal parameter comp, you cannot like put an animation to it. You can link it, you can bind it, but you cannot like put an LFO to it and then change the LFO really quickly within the UI. Another thing which we're really interested about, if you have like 10 parameters and you want to do randomization, but you want the second parameter be looking at the first parameter and stay in sync and have the same ratio to each other, that gets really complex with just the random stuff. So we're building our own noise controllers, and this is also the part where we integrate AI, basically having presets on these things that we think are pretty, and then it starts learning from it. That's the whole idea.
Any more questions? Kite?
Thank you. Could you guys talk more about how you see AI and touch fitting into the pipeline, and like how AI, I guess in this scenario, can help you generate content or you act as a curator?
Yes, what we're trying to do is make every component adjustable with parameters. And now we're using presets a lot, which is like setting all those parameters in a certain way. Since like if you have 10 parameters, 10 sliders, it can grow infinitely choices. And now the idea is still research. We haven't finished it yet, but to use those presets, Roy has a very good eye for design. So if he makes nice presets, then we can use that data to learn, to train a model, to come up with new parameters.
Yeah. So in the end, we have to make pretty button.
Yeah.
It's basically like a random, but then a more intelligent one.
For anything.
Everything.
Position, composition, everything. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, this is more like an example to show like in stills. We had animation in there, but it gets a bit more too complex. That's the whole fun part. Like it's, if you change the, again, input, output, now it's sliders. If you do an LFO in there, and the whole thing starts animating. And the whole thing starts but then again, like you need to have like controllers that, the phaser, definitely going to use that. Yeah. Hey.
How do you deal with the time composing for the noisier project?
Yeah.
So you're saying you deal with presets and all that stuff. Yeah. When you're following music, how do you time compose?
Yeah, that's another project we've been busy with for a year, building a sequencer. Yeah, we wanted to have it finished for this talk, but yeah, of course, like it wasn't. Now it's just using the sequence of Ableton. So we use Ableton as the thing. It's only trigger based, basically. It's sending node on, node off, triggering presets. But in the way I see it, like Ableton is an audio sequence, and we need a video sequence, but it's a lot of work. It's not a lot of work to make a sequencer that does it. It's a lot of work to make it as flexible and as intuitive to use it as Ableton. And since no one is paying for that it's like a free time thing, so it probably takes a while. Yeah. Or maybe they can make a really nice sequencer.
Well, it's what
Yeah.
always wanting to know what you want from us next. So.
Okay,
What do you want from us next?
Yeah. A sequence would be really, really nice. Like we tried different things, either in Ableton or like timer chops and all through scripts and things. The whole chase thing was like that as well. It had to be exactly at that point. And the normal, the keyframe animation, in essence is okay, but it doesn't work well at all. There's one program called Phaser, which is an OSA sequencer. That's a really, really good. It's developed by one guy from Hungary, and that's a really good one for visual stuff. Yeah.
Any more questions, guys? All right.
In the back.
Oh, there's one. Hand up again.
We're good on time, huh? Good.
Just really quick, wondering how you like to approach your preset system. Is that something that you rolled from scratch? Are you externalizing that? Or are you using anything that's built in?
Well, at this moment, it's still a bit in development, but we did build it from scratch. It's just two parameter settings, and then blending those together. But it's still not so flexible as we would want to. So it's now just based on one component, can trigger one preset. As you could see with the Noisia thing, what we just showed, was that it was only on the camera. And the other triggers, what we did, like shooting the lasers and stuff, was all based on literally the input of Ableton going to the effects. So,
yeah. And the problem what we have now is like the parameter thing that what didn't work. That there's a lot of extra stuff that we have to store in a preset. So not only the stuff that you can read, get from TouchDesigner itself, the value and the min-max value and stuff like that, but also LFO type, for instance, if you want to drive it by an LFO or an input and all that stuff. So that has to be stored in such a way which can be either in the component or external, and that has to be triggered by the presets. But if you trigger a preset where an LFO is running this one on this speed, and then another preset is going like really fast, you have to have an A/B switcher that blends them together, and that's the completed thing which we pushed a bit forward for now. Yeah.
Okie doke. Well, thank you very, very much.
Yeah,
That
you.
was like double good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Ja, dat was fijn.